Hello and welcome to Political Brew. I'm Chris Costa in for Phil Hirschkorn. Today, I'm joined by Democratic analyst Betsy Sweet and Republican analyst Lisa Keim. Thank you both for being here today.
Good morning.
We want to talk about a whole bunch of different things that have happened this week. We will talk about Election Day and how Mainers voted on the referendum questions. And Americans are now facing the longest government shutdown in American history, what that means for people here in Maine ahead. But first, unexpected news out of Washington. Congressman Jared Golden announced this week he will not be running for re-election. Golden had said back in May that he would run again, but he wrote in an op-ed to the Bangor Daily News this week that he had a change of heart, fueled by what he describes as the polarization and the nastiness in politics, including death threats against him and his family. He says, quote, "I don't fear losing. What has become apparent to me is that I now dread the prospect of winning. Simply put, what I could accomplish in this increasingly unproductive Congress pales in comparison to what I could do in that time as a husband, father, and son." First of all, I want to get both of you to react to this decision by Jared Golden to not run again for what is a very competitive district. Lisa, do you want to go first?
Sure. I was surprised. I definitely was surprised at the timing of it, the fact that he's, basically leaving it to be a wide open primary, which he mentions that he wants. Just surprised that he did it, except that I know from different things I've heard through the years that he's always been uncomfortable being in Washington so much. He has a young family, and also I think the divisiveness has always bothered him, and the fact that he's a Democrat in a Republican district, he's just always been torn between two sides. I think that probably weighs on him.
I imagine it would. Betsy, what was your reaction when he said, because as a Democrat controlling what Lisa mentioned, a pretty red, if not purple, district, right?
Yeah, no, it's a purple district. I think it's a, he has always threaded the needle, between in that district, which I think has been important. As Mike Michaud did that before him, so it's not completely red district because it was Mike Michaud who was more progressive, I think, than certainly Jared has been down there. I think it's the toxic atmosphere in Washington that I don't care what side you're on. I think that's really hard to go back to day after day. Again, with a young family, I think that it does blow this wide open, and I think that for the Washington political hacks, that this puts us this much more in a toss-up category than it had been before. So I think if you're doing the national map, it makes a big difference. I think in Maine, I think we're going to see, if you combine this with the election results from Tuesday, I think it's wide open here too.
Let's get into that now, because what does Golden dipping out of the race mean for now Republican former Governor Paul LePage versus Democrat former Secretary of State Matt Dunlap going head-to-head in this district race?
Well, that's not going to be who it is. That may be who it is.
Oh,
but
sorry,
I think
I meant at the time being.
More people I think will get in both sides. I think more people will get in with LePage based on what happened on Tuesday. I think it being an open seat, more people will get in on the Democratic side. Clearly, Dunlap and LePage have a head up. Since they've been in the race, they've got campaign teams in place. They're ready to go. But we'll see what happens. Certainly, we're hearing a lot of noise about potential candidates on both sides that are going to jump in.
Yeah, I think there'll be some jumping in. I think it does nod towards LePage, like it gives some weight to him, because Golden would have been a very difficult incumbent to beat. He's well liked. He's a good guy. So I think this does give LePage an edge for sure, and a Republican an edge because it is a Republican seat.
I did want to ask, generally speaking, about Golden is now really the second very notable House of Representatives Democrat to say that they won't be seeking re-election. The other one this week, Nancy Pelosi. What does this mean for the Democratic Party in general at the national level? Lisa, do you want to go first, or Betsy?
At the national level, with the gerrymandering that just passed in California, I feel like there's actually going to be a lot less attention paid now to Maine's congressional district, CD2, because there won't be needed as much. Because they're going to create probably 5 more Democrat seats in California. It's interesting that they both pulled out and offered the seat up basically to be wide open. And, I don't know what that says because I'm not from California, so I don't know what that says there for her, specific district. But I do think that there's a lot less pressure now on CD2 in Maine.
Well, and I think there's a little bit of a different take. I think Nancy Pelosi is ready to turn it over to a new generation of leadership. And I think that's a thing that, she's bowing out, I think, gracefully. I think it's a little different than Jared. Obviously, he is one of the new generations of leaders. So I think, and I think, again, we have to look at the toxicity, we have to look at the potential violence. We also have to look at what's going to happen. And I think we cannot downplay what happened. And I just want to remind us that the California vote was in response to Texas, so it wasn't like there was no gerrymandering that the Republicans tried to do. So I think there's a lot of that going on. So I think how this all plays out and how important CD2 is in the national map is different. But I think that we are seeing I think we're going to see a number of more congressional candidates across the country who are of that generation that's been there for a long time, start to turn it over to some new leaders, because we are seeing some very exciting new leaders emerge all over the country, as well as here in Maine.
Absolutely. Let's switch over to the 1st Congressional District, because now Congresswoman Shelley Pingree, who has been holding that seat for how many years now? Since she was elected in 2012?
12, yeah.
I mean, so now she has a challenger, this time from within her own party. State Representative Tiffany Roberts announced her campaign this week. Roberts lives in South Berwick. She's in her 4th term in the Maine state legislature. Back in September, she said she was exploring the possibility of running against Pingree, if only to give Democrat voters another option. Here's just a bit of what she says she hopes to do if she's elected.
We can invest more in apprenticeships, trades, community college programs that actually match what employers need, so kids can build their future here and not feel like they have to leave here to find one.
So if Roberts qualifies for the ballot, it will be the first time that she'd face a fellow Democrat in a primary, that Pingree would face a fellow Democrat in a primary since 2012. That's the year that she was elected. So general thoughts, how does Tiffany Roberts fit into this race?
I think Tiffany is a little bit more conservative, leads more toward the center than Representative Pingree. However, I think it's a total uphill battle. I wonder if she's doing it to get name recognition so that she can move forward, if and when Representative Pingree decides to retire. But Representative Pingree has been an incredible advocate for Maine and for so many issues, food, agriculture, a lot of things that Mainers care about. And certainly during this shutdown and during what we're seeing, she has been an amazing advocate. So I think Roberts has an uphill climb. And I think primaries are great. I think primaries are great for people. It keeps us all honest and accountable. So, and I think anybody who wants to run at this day and age, it's kudos to them.
Yeah, kudos to her for running. I think there is concern about the sort of the aging out of people that are representing us in Washington, and maybe she's stepping into that. I do appreciate that she is more business friendly. She's gotten awards for that. So I think she is offering a different perspective and putting herself out there to say, would you like to bring us back to maybe more of the central Democrat theme rather than going progressive and socialist, which is where the party seems to be going. So I have respect for her and doing it, and I think kudos, and it'll be good to see her get out there. Pingree is actually, I've heard from many different places that she's lazy as a congressperson. So I think that might be some of that coming back to bite her a little bit too.
All right, we do need to take a quick break. When we return, a look at how the referendum questions fared this election day in Maine. Welcome back to Political Brew. This past week, hundreds of Mainers went to the polls, making their voices heard on issues in their towns and cities, and weighing in on some statewide ballot referendum questions. With 99% of the ballots now counted, Question 2, a red flag law initiative, passed with about 63% of Mainers voting in favor. That means 37% were opposed. This means the red flag law will join Maine's pre-existing yellow flag law, creating 2 different ways for Mainers to approach gun safety. Artie Barnard, whose son was killed in the Lewis and Mass shootings, was heavily involved in getting this initiative on the ballot. Here's what he said about it on election night.
A family member should be able to tell somebody if somebody is in trouble like this and owns guns and could be a threat to people, and get him help. Because if they had listened, maybe Robert Card would be here. We didn't lose any tools in this. We still have the yellow flag law. We have all the tools to do with the yellow flag law.
Now, in a statement posted by the Maine Law Enforcement Coalition, Joe Bureau, the president of the Maine State Troopers Association, says, quote, "We respect the outcome of this election, but our position has not changed. Question 2 expands government authority to seize firearms in ways that risk violating constitutional safeguards and create confusion in the field, both for citizens and officers, end quote. Meanwhile, the Sportsmen's Alliance of Maine, which opposed that measure, says it is consulting with attorneys to see if there's a way to challenge this. Lisa, you were the treasurer for No On To, right?
Yes.
Tell me about your initial reaction to this not passing.
I was really disappointed. The quote we just heard said, families should be able to step forward and get people help. Well, the red flag referendum law that is just passed gets people no help. And the yellow flag law, the one we already had in place, actually does bring people to help. And there's a myriad of issues with the law as it's written. One is that there's no safeguards. If there's willful misuse of it, there's no repercussions written in that law for someone that does that. So it can be abused. I am concerned that it's passed. The fact that law enforcement and many people came out in opposition to this that actually have to utilize both laws speaks volumes to the way it was written and the way that it would play out for people and increasing harm. So I'm disappointed, very disappointed that it passed, and we'll see now how things play out on the ground for folks when these sorts of things come to pass. I'm hoping that yellow flag is still used because people need help, and that the point of yellow flag was to get someone to be assessed and then put them on that pathway to get mental health help that they need.
Betsy, I see you shaking your head and nodding your
Well,
head.
of course, we want people to get help, and this was, this referendum didn't just win. This was a huge win. This was not, this is the first time there's been a gun safety referendum on the ballot in which the margin was this big, and certainly in favor. And everywhere. It wasn't just Portland. It wasn't just Cumberland. Millinocket voted for this. Fort Kent voted for this. And so I think it shows people's their understanding and the difference between something that is taking away a right to someone's Second Amendment rights and something that provides safety for families. This just provides another tool. You want to use yellow flag? Go ahead. But if you're a mother and you know your child is in danger of taking their own life and they have guns, this gives you another option. And so that's what Maine people understood, that's what they knew, and it won big. And I think it shows a little bit of a groundswell, a change, a shift in how people are looking at gun safety in this after Lewiston and just at what we see around the country with mass shootings.
Lisa, it is a felony, right, to file a false petition when it comes to red flag?
In the law itself, I didn't read where there was repercussions, but I could have that wrong. Yeah. But yes.
No,
that being the case, I would like to get a different response from you on that. Does that assuage your fears at all with this?
Oh, absolutely not. PFAs also are abused, and because you can take someone into court and the judge has only one person say so to take away someone's firearms. If they want to disarm you because they have malevolent intentions, they still can do that, and there is a period of time where a person is disarmed and maybe left unable to defend themselves.
But let's not get into the weeds of PFAs because there are some issues with how law enforcement approach the seizure of firearms with PFAs compared to red flag versus yellow flag. I think the point that is important to, go ahead, Betsy.
No, I just have to say, I think that it's so important to think who we're protecting. As you hear Lisa talk, she's protecting the person who is potentially going to do harm to themselves, most importantly, or potentially to someone else. What the red flag law does is trying to protect people from themselves and the children every day who parents are afraid to send them into school. So we're going to weigh who we should protect and whose constitutional due process and all that kind of stuff we're going to weigh. Every day I choose the kids of Maine.
Except the yellow flag law is doing that already. It's the most effective gun law there is in the entire nation. So it's already happening with the yellow flag.
So I do want to ask you then, Betsy, Governor Mills had made that very important change after the Lewiston mass shootings to include the extreme risk protection order as part of the yellow flag process, right? That police, law enforcement can go in, take somebody into protective custody so they can begin the process of the mental health evaluation, getting the judge's order. Why do you feel that the red flag is so important in changing that compared to what's already on the books?
Because I think it puts the onus of protection on the law enforcement. And I spent 40 years in mental health. Sometimes when someone is having a mental health crisis, the worst thing that can happen is to have law enforcement be the first touch. It is when there's a family member who can work with them, and that's what we are. We're just
but
giving.
This doesn't change that.
We're just giving.
Law enforcement is the first touch. If you go to court and you have a red flag on someone, it's law enforcement that goes to that house.
I know, but
that doesn't change at all. It's law enforcement that shows up at their house, and there's no backup of any mental health evaluation. It's simply a gun grab.
So then I want to ask you, Lisa, how does a family decide whether they pursue the yellow flag process or a red flag process if they feel that they are in danger like Betsy's describing?
I think think the most natural thing anyone does when they feel like they're in danger or there is a substantial danger near them, they call 911. So I think in general, people are going to do that. If they're well informed, they may make that step to the courthouse as long as it's open when they're like, okay, there's a threat of danger here, so I'm gonna go see if my local courthouse is open and fill out this paperwork and bring it to a judge and hope that they agree to this. I think in general, people should call 911 if they feel like someone is in danger, a danger to themselves or others, they should call 911. I mean, that is our natural instinct and reaction.
And I think it's so smart to give people as many tools as possible to help protect everyone from danger.
They work side by side.
They do.
Okay, we do need to take a quick break. When we come back, more on the election, and we've got plenty more to talk about on Political Brew when we come back. Welcome back to Political Brew. We just finished speaking about question 2. Now on to question 1, the ballot initiative that would have required Mainers to have an ID to vote and would have created provisions on absentee voting. Now, with about 99% of ballots cast, nearly 64% of Mainers voted down question 1. It's an issue that many Democrats and nonpartisan groups came out strongly against, with Maine Democrats spending the past few weeks leading up to the election strongly campaigning against it. Lisa, what happened on the Republican side here? Why do you think this did not pass, given the passion that Republicans feel about the need for voter ID?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, the way the question was written, it was absolutely written to confuse voters. I had so many people call me and say, Lisa, I just read it and I know how I think that I want voter ID, but I'm reading this and I feel like, maybe it really is going to, erase absentee voting. And there was a lot of lies and misinformation spread around this about it, like really exaggerating the impact on absentee voting.
How so?
Because they're just saying that it's going to erase all the signs say save absentee voting.
Right, but the language of the question, the referendum question,
right.
How was that confusing and lying?
Oh, just because the way the question was written, it front-loaded all of the issues that were really very minor changes to the law and would barely impact the way the average person would go vote, even absentee vote. It took away 2 days of absentee voting.
But it also put in all sorts of other necessities for people to have voter ID, not just to go vote.
So the voter ID is the huge part of it. And that is the absolute crux of the issue. That would have changed. People would have had to show an ID to vote. So I think that is safeguards our system. The other changes were much smaller. I will say, in fact, that one of the very new changes to our voting law allows someone to be automatically re-enrolled in absentee voting. So they never have to request it again. An absentee ballot will just keep getting mailed to that same address again and again and again until, now it's open up completely. But right now it's only for, well, it hasn't gone into effect yet, but they changed the law that you can have ongoing absentee ballot.
Under certain conditions.
But this...
If you're disabled, if you're elderly, if you can't just say, oh, hey, I'm Betsy Sweet, I want you to send me an absentee ballot every day.
Current law is that if you're elderly or disabled, that's true. So elderly move...
So I can now request an ongoing absentee ballot?
No.
If you're
that would have
elderly,
made my life a lot easier.
Yeah, but see, if you move, there's a ballot still coming to your home. And I talked to clerks who mailed out ballots this year to homes that they knew the voters had moved.
But isn't
and
it
then they catch them on the way in.
Well, that was my next question. Is it not then the clerk's job as they go through the process of, let's say somebody really tried to fill out 2 absentee ballots, wouldn't they cross-reference those?
Well, they only knew that someone moved because they just happened to know them. But most people, when they move, they don't go and change their voter registration. It's just not something they think about.
Not until they have to register again, right?
Yes, but when you're trying to safeguard voting, you're trying to safeguard voting. And the way to safeguard voting isn't to send a ballot out every single year to an address and hope that someone just does the right thing with that ballot. That's just not the way to safeguard the foundational elements of our democracy.
All right, Betsy, go ahead.
All right. So, first of all, on voter ID, this was a solution in search of a problem. There has not been voter fraud in Maine. There's been 2 incidences in the last 32 years. So that was one thing. But it was the Republicans, the people who put this forward, who added all the absentee ballot stuff in. It wasn't anybody else. And so the absentee ballot, it is not trivial what they were trying to do. They took away postage for your absentee ballot. They took away the number of ballot boxes in a city like Portland. So there would be one.
Would have.
Yeah, it would have. It would, one in the city of Portland or in the city of Bangor, one place you could drop off your thing. The mailing of the absentee ballot over each year is if you are disabled or you're elderly or you have a condition. It's not just if you feel like it. So these were things that made it possible for people to vote who have a difficult time getting to the polls. And that's what this was about. And that's what people reacted so strongly to. They didn't see the need in terms of voter ID because there's not widespread fraud. There's not any of that in Maine. And the second thing was, it's like a lot of people, a huge number of people in Maine vote absentee because they either work, they work when the polls are there, they don't get to do it, or they vote early. And so people recognize that this was a way to try and reduce the number of people voting. And that was just clear. It was clear how they wrote it. Had they just done voter ID, I think we might have seen a different.
So there's like 25 or 26
wait, I didn't
states.
Hang on a second. If they had just done voter ID, they might have had a different result. But it was because they piled on all this other stuff that really does affect people who are not able-bodied, people who can just run into the polls. And that's what people in Maine were responding to.
Do you agree to that?
I think everyone agrees that if the question had been simplified and it really was just ID, that there likely could have been a different turnout with this. And in fact, though, every state that's passed voter ID has increased voter turnout, not decreased. And that's just a flat-out fact about every state that's ever passed a voter ID. So it doesn't decrease. It wouldn't have impacted. I would love to see us do voter ID, but I do agree that, having all of those other aspects of this law was too much, far too much.
It was a grab. It was a grab.
One aspect of this law would have then, if it had passed, would have then required the Secretary of State to provide free with an asterisk, voter IDs to anybody who wants one, right? Free to the voter, not free to the state. And then ultimately, really, that comes back to taxpayers. Would that have been a concern for Republicans, Lisa?
I just think because it's such a small number of people, the amount of money we're talking about is very small. And yes, I do think that if you are going to pass something that requires voter ID, you have to make sure people that are eligible to vote have free access to ID.
Anything to add, Betsy?
That's nice.
All right,
I still think it's a solution in search of a problem.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. Political Brew will be right back. Welcome back to Political Brew. The U.S. federal government shutdown continues, and it is now the longest shutdown in American history. Senators met on Thursday morning to negotiate a deal while the U.S. House of Representatives is still out of session. As of the time of this recording, which is Friday morning, there's still no deal and no plan for the Senate to vote. Lisa and Betsy, how much longer can this go on? I think that the president has been very clear, as has the Speaker of the House, that this is not ending until Democrats bend.
I think this can go on a long time, sadly. And I think, what I think is criminal right now is that this has become a political football. There are children and people in Maine who are now hungry and are going to go cold, not to mention all the workers associated with those programs and federal workers, not to mention unsafe air travel. So the longer we see this, the longer it happens. And there is no reason. You can't really negotiate in the House if they're not even in session. You realize that the House has not been in session for 6 weeks. Mm-hmm. So they're getting paid, they're getting their health care, they're doing fine, and they're not even working. So I think that the attempt to try and negotiate has been, and Schumer and Jeffries have said, we will meet you anytime, anywhere to start talking. I don't think, politics is the art of compromise. Saying until the Democrats bend, we're not doing a thing, that's not compromise, that's not politics, that's power play. And that's what they're doing, and it's at the expense of hungry kids and cold older people sitting in their homes hoping that they're going to be able to get heat, which right now they won't be able to get it as of December 1st.
Lisa?
I'm ready to see the shutdown end. It looks
Sure.
terrible for both sides, absolutely. And it's such a hardship. It's such a burden on families that are not getting paid. It's going to be awful if Thanksgiving happens and we have a 40% decrease in flights. The Republicans have voted 14 times to open the government, and the Democrats refuse. And the Republicans have said again and again, we absolutely will look at subsidies. But we have to remember that the conversation around subsidies, these are COVID-era subsidies. The Democrats put them in and purposefully sunsetted them for January of 2026. So we're not surprised at this moment that these subsidies are ending. And there's been a lot of time to bring them up up, even for they themselves to change them when they still had power. And now they're saying it has to be a government shutdown if you don't do it right now, when everyone knows we have to talk about this. The costs are skyrocketing, but we have to talk about the cost of a social safety net overall as well. Like this, we are bankrupting our nation. We're handing debt onto unborn children. I mean, there's a huge conversation that needs to be had, but we can't have that now. We need to open the government, get the government running, and have the conversations that need to be had. I am absolutely so upset for the people that are being impacted by this. LIHEAP, just the benefits that people are expecting that are going to be cut off from. I mean, we need to open this up and give people what they're expecting for now, and make sure that we're having the ongoing conversations that are needed.
So do you feel then that Republicans need to do a little bit of bending, a little bit of compromising to say, we just need to open the government and then we can discuss the ACA subsidies? Or am I misunderstanding?
I think that that's what they are saying, is that they're saying, here's a clean resolution. It's the same one they already passed. It's a funding, it's just I mean, I know they're offering a shorter term funding solution that they're hoping the Democrats will go for, that would fund the government through the end of December. I think they might be voting on that today. But it's just, we need to do something to get the trains running again, and we absolutely have to have the conversation on subsidies, on healthcare in general. The costs are skyrocketing.
Right. And the problem is that they have not been willing to have those conversations about the skyrocketing costs of healthcare. And all we need to do is look at our own Senator Susan Collins when we passed the ACA. Do you remember? I remember very clearly that there were some strong concerns about what she was going to vote for, and she said, "Oh, they've promised me that we'll talk about it when it's done." She voted, and it was never talked about again. And so they don't have a good track record with this. I don't know if you've opened your health care insurance premium bill. Same. I'm on Medicare, and my supplemental has more than doubled. So, and that's Medicare, so we're in fairly good shape. I know people whose costs have gone from $800 a month to $3,000 a month. That's untenable. Not only for people, but it's going to close our rural hospitals. So we're going to end up with 2 hospitals in Maine. So I don't know when, to see, we have to draw the line. Again, saying you do it my way or the highway, that's not where the Democrats are, but that's where the Republicans have been. No.
They're the obstructionists right now.
They have said, come, let's talk.
And the Republicans have said, we will talk, let's get the government going.
Let's talk after you do it our way. That's not compromise.
It isn't our way. They agreed to this continuing resolution previously. It's no changes. It's not like the Republicans have created...
The change is that those subsidies go away. That's the change.
That's coming in the future, and it's something they
must...
No,
it's happening right now.
But they must deal with it, that's true, but they also need to keep the trains running while they have those conversations. And, for 40 days or almost 40 days now, they've said the same thing, and the Democrats and they've said they'll talk about it. They've said they'll deal with it.
But they don't have a good track record on that,
They absolutely
Lisa.
have to do it.
Well,
you cannot allow it not to happen. It's impossible.
Just a quick point. When I was speaking with a reporter who's connected with the Maine Monitor, the nonpartisan nonprofit news organization that we partner with, so the reporter that I spoke to said that Speaker Mike Johnson had said, we want to keep the House out of session so that we can kind of force the Senate to make a vote. Is that the right approach, Lisa?
Well, at this point, the ball is in the court of the Senate. They need to move, and they need to do something. And
is it not controlled by Republicans?
It is, but I'm just saying, if the House is not there, and I'm sorry, I thought you said if the House is not there.
No, right. The House of Representatives, Mike Johnson, says we're not coming to the table. We want the Senate to take care of its part. The Senate, controlled by Republicans, shouldn't they be working to get the trains running?
Yes, they absolutely should.
Are they?
They're making the offers, they're making the votes. They voted 14 times to open the government.
With no change.
Yeah, so, which is honestly a clean resolution that the Democrats voted for previously. It's not like it's some...
subsidies
okay.
But so it's not like a partisan bill. It's something that is a clean, continuing resolution.
I need a quick yes or no from each of you. Senator Susan Collins said she believed Election Day would have a positive impact on these very negotiations we've been talking about. Do you believe that that has helped, yes or no?
I don't think it's helped.
No.
All right. Lisa, Betsy, we appreciate your time on this Political Brew on this Sunday. That's all for this week. Thank you for joining us.